So yeah, welcome Ramesh, and thank you for joining me in this exploration and sort of just really. I always like to discuss health with people that have gone, the untraditional route and the unconventional route, and there are so many of us that are guiding others back. Really, what I find back to nature and back to simplicity.
Well, I think that is the key word, simplicity. And
Yeah.
thank you so much, firstly, for this opportunity, Alex. It's great to be sitting here sharing information with you. I guess at the end of it all, um, we really just want to share information with others so that it can enhance more our lives and theirs as well. So it
Absolutely.
started some time ago. I'm 62 now, so it's been a while that I started, and it was more than 25 years ago when I was sick and divorced and demented, and my children crying in different homes. My body was gnarling over with arthritis and was quite bloated with my appendix thrown out at 25. It actually burst as I was being wheeled into hospital. So,
Mm.
lucky to be at the right place at the right time, I guess. And yeah, my skin was crawling with psoriasis. I was using thick lens glasses to peer through then. And just totally confused and angry about life. Why should I have to feel so awful? Why should I have to be divorced? Why should my children be crying in different homes and I can't manage my life well? So I guess chaos and pain comes to break down the system so that we
Yeah.
can rebuild light. But there's unfortunately not many people in the world that we can call role models, and more especially at my time when there wasn't any technology. And I grew up on a farm, and my world was very small, and around me were other sick people, and even the people who profess to be wise, like in my community as a Hindu, the priests, and they were talking about God and they were talking about being good in life. But I looked at their bodies, the temples of their souls at that time, and it was just bloated and sick, and they were coughing, and people were getting divorced too. And I thought, so how can these people who are professing to be older and wiser be so sick? And also, there's so much chaos in their lives. So I had to leave. I had to leave the tribe, basically, and
Mm.
community of people. And they don't let you leave, unfortunately, because if people let you leave the tribe, it means that I am actually uh, right in my approach to leaving them, and that there's something wrong with them, and they don't like that. So they
Yeah.
will try to suck me back in and say, God will get you if you don't do this, that, and the other. And I got scared and I stayed until I couldn't. And then the tribe kicks a person out. So they say, okay, we'll disown you, leave, do what you want. So I did. And it reminds me of a story by Richard Bach, I think it was, where there's this mountain stream that just flows. And as mountain streams are, they shallow, gurgly, and clear water. And there's all these little green weeds that grow in the water. And on that are little creatures that cling on, and that's where they live. They get their sustenance from the water, and they hold on to these plants, and their lives are lived that way until they die. But one day, one of them said, I want to let go. And the others all around said, no, don't do that. You'll be dashed against the rocks, you'll be battered, you'll be bruised, you'll die. And this one said, oh, okay, I'll stay back, I won't go. And then suddenly came upon itself again. No, I have to leave. And then the others stopped him again. And eventually he said, I'm out of here. I can't live my life like this. And he let go of that little plant that he was clinging on to. And sure enough, the current carried him down, battered him, bruised him. And in letting go, he let go completely. And as such, current buoyed him up. and he floated downstream. And the others looked up and saw him while clinging on their own little weeds. And they said, hey, look, one of us, he flies. He must be our savior. He's come to save us. And that story stuck in my brain for a long, long time.
That's
And
beautiful.
yes, yeah, the idea of quitting and leaving, those two words became important. One can quit on the self, and it's a downward devolution of one's energy, or one can leave. That's ascension, and that's an upward spiraling of one's energy. And I think every human is here for that. Unfortunately, not
Absolutely.
many people realize that we're here for that because they've got their nose too close to the blackboard of their lives, and they just see such a limited vision. And that vision is get on the treadmill in the morning and run on it, and we're shaped and chiseled by the system to become little cogs that fit in the big wheel of commerce. And we put our shoulders to it, and we push and we push and we push from morning till night, till that big wheel will chew us up and spit us out someday as mirthless heaps called
Mhm.
retirement day.
It's so
And
beautiful to hear you, because it feels, it really feels like that's exactly has been my experience, and it's wonderful. I also had to kind of leave the nest, leave the tribe, and be damned for it. But
yeah,
and that's always, I mean, what I've learned is that when you are stopped, when you are damned, that is a sure sign that you're going in the right direction.
yes, because we break free from the norm where everybody becomes like TikTok people,
Yeah,
get up, go to work, come back, watch TV, eat, sleep, get up, go to work, eat, sleep, and then die, And I guess that kind of destiny wasn't good enough for me or shouldn't be good enough for anybody else. There's more to it.
right.
But once again, the system is created by, as I call it in my book, Being Human, the dark souls of the planet, the head of the serpent that you don't see, the body you do, the different various governments and their henchmen, and the will and the dominion of the dark souls of the planet filters down from the head to the body and to the henchmen, all the way down to the masses who are running.
Absolutely. And yet
So
what I'm also seeing is, because initially, I mean, my journey really started in the health revolution, and eventually in the raw movement and the superfoods and all of that. And what I have discovered through the cleansing, the deep cleansing and fasting and regeneration of the body, is that really health is so simple, and that we don't need any special products. We don't need any supplements, really. I mean, yes, one can have a little bit of help and that for certain things, but that ultimately so many of the things that we're trying to be sold to, and the superfoods and all that movement, that there is, again, it's, yes, it's better than the chemicals, but ultimately we are still substituting, we are still trying to reach for something out of ourselves, instead of coming to realization that all we need is within, and that all we need is the little movements, the few little things and practices that are going to enhance our lives.
yeah, I found too at that time in my confused state, searching for answers. And one of the things that I couldn't do was conform to the norm. And so I always had to strike out on my own. And when it came to supplements at that particular phase in my life, I thought, so where do these people go and get this from? Where is it
Mm,
from the planet? How can a cell be broken down and then still remain natural without us having to put some sort of chemical into it to stabilize it? So I veered away from um, all of these supplements and so on. Besides, nowadays I find that if the body is that acidic, and there's so much junk and muck lying in the colon, taking one of these little tablets or supplements and dropping into that cesspool, it's just like making expensive urine, because it can't actually be absorbed when the body is that acidic anyhow.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just so challenging, but so rewarding also when I look back on my life now. And well, the other day, an old colleague from another job that I used to do way back arrived for some treatment and asked me, "How's your life nowadays?" And I said, "Sometimes it's almost boring because there's nothing, no conflicts, no worries, no problems. Whatever I think about just comes to me. And, I'm the creator of this beautiful life that I have." And I mean, when I spent most of my life scraping myself off the floor just to make it through the day and praying to a higher wisdom and intelligence out there to please guide me, to please help me. And
Mm.
I know that each time I scraped myself off the floor, all I wanted to do one day was to be able to stand up and talk somewhere. And the only thing people must tell me is that makes sense. And I thought, in a world of nonsense, of so much nonsense, if some of us could stand up and make sense, it is a great and tremendous value. So I spent my life trying to just make sense of the
Yeah.
nonsense around.
That's beautiful. And I love how you say that, yes, there is no more drama. Everything just comes easily. There are no problems. There is no difficulty. And life is just really bliss. And when I tell people that that is possible, and as I guide people to that, what always strikes me is actually how much people fight that state.
Mm.
It takes a lot, and that's where I always like to ask people, are you sure you have suffered enough?
Yeah, I know that is the greatest motivator sometimes when you're down on the floor and have to scrape yourself off just to
Yeah.
get through the day. When your back's against the wall, and sometimes the only alternative is to grow, because disease comes to either kill us quickly or to help us to grow wise. And
Mm-hmm.
that breaking down of the system so that we can rebuild with light and with more consciousness and awareness.
Yeah.
And I think nowadays it's so much easier because the information is so easily available via all these technology and stuff.
Mm.
But back then in my own life, you know, uh, I was so in a chaotic state that eventually I left this country all those years ago and kind of like ran away from all my problems. But
Mm-hmm.
the moment I did that and I was on the plane for the first time going to the East, it was like I had suddenly removed myself from being too close to the blackboard of my life. And I could see a little better with greater vision about myself. And that no matter what the problems were in my life, there was nobody else except me
Mm-hmm.
to take care of, and that I should count myself as number one. And it was a situation where once in these 3 years of travel, that I was sitting in an ashram in India, and a gentleman there said to the group of people around me and pointed to me and said, "Count how many people are here." And I started by saying 1, 2, 3, 4, and he said, "Stop, you don't know how to count." And he asked the other person to count, and they also started 1, 2, 3, and said, "Stop." And we thought, what's wrong with this guy? That's how we learn to count. And excuse me. And then he said, "No, you start with 1, 2,
Mm.
4, 5, 6, that you should be number one." And I thought, whoa,
Absolutely.
crazy, because I never thought of myself like that. I mean, right now I'm sitting here and I'm talking to you. And if I counted from you as number one and me number two, then that would, in his eyes, be wrong. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, So if if I think of you there and me here, if you fell over right now and passed on, I would not exist for you.
Yeah.
So the only reason I exist is because you are there
Mm-hmm.
to 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 reckon what is going on.
And
So
that is also, I just want to stop you here because it's such an important, all these little teachings that we are discussing, other people listening, they may say, okay, well, when are they going to get to the actual point? But I feel this is so important, is that the paradigm shift that needs to happen is that we need to come first. If we don't make ourselves first, and if we don't serve ourselves to the fullest, how can we ever spill over and actually be giving? It's an impossibility.
yeah, I found that especially in my marriage in those days, as they say, two halves make a one. And I found that I was just a half person and she was a half person trying to become one. And it was like the blind leading the blind all over again. I had to become a whole person. One
Yeah.
and one should make two. I'd rather be that. So throughout this entire journey of mine, I had to learn all these little lessons. And I think it's important that there are many little points that add up to a big point, if we're trying to make a point here, I guess. For me, if I look at somebody and that's a big picture of that person, it's the
Mm-hmm.
little strokes of the paintbrush that made that picture. And if I want to change a big picture, then I have to change the little strokes of the paintbrush, and the
Absolutely.
picture will change. So it's often people are looking for the quick fix. Where's this one big thing that will transform my life
Yes,
completely? Where's this magical spoonful of medicine that will just suddenly transform me? I found that it's not available, because if
I
it was
agree.
covered it, I'd just be sitting here and I'd be king and I'd be saying, hey, here's your spoonful of medicine. Poof, put your $1,000,000 in here. Next,
Yeah.
please. And
Yeah.
it doesn't work.
Yeah. It's the little daily practices, the accumulation of, it's like the drop that falls onto the stone, and drop by drop by drop, it shapes the stone. And we think it's not the little things. And I'm so with you, it's the same thing for in my, I mean, we do the same thing. And so the people that come to me, they're hoping that, I will give them the one big answer, or the one big medicine, or there's a special trick that Alex has figured out that's different.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, the trick is in the daily, committing to the daily practice. So
Yeah.
what is your daily practice nowadays? And obviously, I mean, it has evolved, but where are you at now in your daily practice for health?
Well, I've created the 5 principles of being human. And those 5 principles has taken me this 25 years to create.
Mm,
And so now I have made it simple, but it's not easy for people. And
yeah.
my job, I tell them, I've made these 5 principles, I've created them, and and they always say, it's so simple. I see my whole life in these 5 principles, but it's not easy to do that. I said, that's your job. It's taken me 25 years to create simplicity. Now it's your job to go and make it easy enough for you to be able to use it. So the first principle is, I could go through the 5 principles if you like and skim through them. I
Sure. Yeah.
usually write it on a board so it becomes very visual for people, but I'll just speak it out now, and maybe at some other time we can go through me writing it out and so on.
Yes.
Um, is it okay to speak about the 5 principles?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I found that life is not a battle, it's a game. And
Yes.
if game, then like any game, there has to be rules to that game. And these
Hmm.
5 principles become kind of like the guiding rule to how to play the game well. The first principle is know thyself. Who you are is not what you are. That may sound a little cryptic, But the saints and the prophets of old have been saying it for a long time now. Man, know thyself. Who are you? Now, I've been asking that question for a long, long time. And
Mm-hmm.
man has been asking that question for a long time. Know thyself. Who are you? The mists of time have long since dissipated, and we're still asking the same question, and we're even more confused about the answer. And I've been thinking about it for a long time too, and I realized that the question itself is not the very most accurate question. I mean, who teaches us to question a question? We don't even question enough. But why question a question, especially if it is being said by wise people? So I realized that the more appropriate question should be, what am I? What I am is energy. And
Mm-hmm.
every, no matter what it is and whoever they are, will concur that we are souls, that we are energy. And if you look at the entirety, even science says there is this form of energy that seems to know what it is doing and knows how to do it. If they said it knows what it's doing and knows how to do it, then you have to have scientific proof for that. So it seems to know what it's doing and knows how to do it. And then I thought, okay, that must be intelligence if it knows how to do it. And then science also says there's 92 natural elements in the atmosphere or that make up everything that we can see.
Mm-hmm.
92 elements. Two of them might be hydrogen and oxygen. If they come together, you get water. And my body is made out of around 18 of these 92 elements that make the planet. And science and technology has produced 24 synthetic elements, a combination of which gives you everything artificial on this planet. So I am made of something that is natural, and I live in a jungle, a concrete jungle now that is totally unnatural. And the
Yes.
question being asked is, who am I in this concrete jungle? But the more appropriate question is, what am I? I am energy, and who I am are the stories that are contained in the subconscious mind, in my brain, in the
Yeah.
filing cabinet that has been instilled in me since the time I was born. And I
Mm-hmm.
suggest say, give us a child from 0 to 7 and we'll show you the man. In other words, from 0 to 7 are the hypnotic years, and the brain then is most susceptible to receiving information, and the more it receives repetitive information, creates neural pathways and neural circuits, and creates it so that it's hardwired to accept that is its truth. So
Mm-hmm.
that's who it is.
Yeah.
So every one of us now sitting in our bodies have a brain, and that's where our stories are. So each of my 5 principles has 4 aspects to it. And the first one is, when I observe you, I envisage you as this energy that is soul or spirit that
Mm-hmm.
has a brain, not a mind, that has a brain to think with, emotions to feel whatever it thinks, and a physical body to enact it. So I am the 4 aspects of being human: the energy, the spirit, the soul, that is what I am, that has a brain to think with, that is the stories of who I am, and emotions to feel, and a physical body to enact it. So the first principle, important, that I am no thing, I am energy, that is now engaging with something to produce the experiences of my life. I think, feel, and behave. This
Mm-hmm.
sequence of creation of my life's experience is important because it's from the subtle to the gross, from the nothing to the something, from the metaphysical to the physical. And it's like there's an amazing energy, there's a God, whatever name we'd like to call this entity by, this beautiful, creative, omnipotent force that says, go, my children, bits of what it is that I am, and visit the earth plane. For that, you will get the gift of a physical body with
Yeah.
which to experience the gross sensuality of being human. But since God helps those who help themselves, will be endowed with a device called a brain with which to think with, and you'll have free will to think whatever it is you want to, but you'll become responsible for those thoughts by having corresponding emotions. So here we are, each one of us, children of this entirety, this magnificence, on a spaceship, sitting on a spaceship that is spinning on its axis at 108,000 and hurtling around the sun at 108,000 kilometers per hour. And it's been doing that since forever.
Mm-hmm.
It takes 65 days and 6 hours to go around that sun. There's such amazing engineering. And you and I are here in these physical bodies, and we have a ticket with an expiry date. And you and I are determining to a large degree that expiry date by how we choose to live. And that is the second principle. But here we are, bits and pieces of this amazing wisdom sitting in this body that has a device to decide and to choose. And it chooses based on how it has learned to choose in this first 7, especially. So this principle, then I could break it down into biological facts as to how it functions, because from the metaphysical to the physical, oh, I think we have an interruption.
Yeah, you do what you need to do.
We're back. Just cut that call off. I'm so sorry that we have.
No worries.
Okay. Yeah, I was just saying that, from this node thing of energy attaching itself to information to produce a thought. So a thought is the energy that I am attaching itself to information which is all around me. And if I'm not attaching to information outside myself, I'm attaching to information that is stored in the subconscious brain, trillions of information. So produce a thought. That is purely electrical. So I'm seeing and I'm just producing thoughts all day long. As science says, about 60 to 70,000 of these thoughts. So I make the thought with energy, but the moment I choose the quality of that information, then I produce a relevant chemical that floods my bloodstream and makes me feel a certain way. So from here to here, it's electrical, but the moment I make that information, from here to here, it's electrochemical. And then I have a reaction. See? So I am thinking, speaking, feeling, behaving.
Yeah.
So think, feel, behave. And the highest form of self-responsibility would be, I am thinking, what am I thinking? How am I thinking? What information am I attaching myself to in this moment, in this thought? How am I feeling? How am I speaking to people? How am I behaving? So it's the highest form of self-realization, the highest form of self-responsibility. So I don't have to say, oh, I have to work and work and work now. And someday, when I get enough money, I'll go sit on the top of the Himalayas with my legs crossed like pretzels, appearing holier than thou, with streaks of ashes, and maybe I'll get enlightened and my life will be beautiful.
Yeah.
No. We have to learn to bloom where it is we are planted. Right today in the office, in the garden, in the kitchen, it's our opportunity to constantly check in on ourselves. And recently, from 2012 to late 2016, I had to go through the deepest of trauma again. I created a loss in my life, the loss of my relationship with my wife, and I tried to get her back, and she was not going to relent to me, thinking that from my egotistical point of view, I can control everything. And I knew I was setting myself up for a chaotic time, and I went into a deep, dark hole. And I knew that the only way to get out of the dark hole was to become light itself. And
beautiful.
After these 4 years of crying almost every day to understand, to get answers for my new book, which is called Mother Earth, Father Sky, a story of timeless intimacy, I came up with just one strategy, simply because I had learned to clean down in the bowel somewhat, but I wasn't clean here in my heart and my brain. So I went around as a fake messiah giving talks, and people would read my book and say this was beautiful. But I was a fake messiah. I was still working from my ego. I knew
Yeah.
words. My wife could never win an argument with me. So
Mm.
she felt in my space and, of course, didn't want to come back. So I had to fix me. And through all that time of trying to recreate my neural pathways, which was so painful, I came up with a simple strategy now that I teach my people that come to me: the right hand and the left hand. This side is, let's just say, God, if you would like to use that word. And this side would be the opposite of what God is. And some people call it a devil or so. This
Mm-hmm.
side is light, this side is dark. This side is joy, this side is stress, this side is love, this side is anger. So everything on my left hand started to become negative, and everything on my right hand was positive. So each thought I created, where was I? Standing here with God, with that thought, is it joy? Is it beauty? Is it positive? Is it light? Or am I standing here with the devil and thinking negative stuff? Oh, go get her back, then your life will be okay. No, stand here with God. You are love, you are joy, you are peace, you are a child of God. Oh no, go get her back. So this was my default setting. I
Yeah.
functioned and I didn't realize that. And in this time of darkness, I realized that's where I live my life from.
Mm-hmm.
As maybe listening eventually to this clip will examine themselves, they would find perhaps that their default setting is here, that every thought that they as a spirit attach to information with their brain, the usage of the brain, will produce a thought, and it just might be from the left hand side.
Absolutely. And here, sorry, I just want to interject because, I feel in this whole spiritual movement that is going on globally and has been going on, many people approach it that from darkness, they can work their way through and get to the light. And my realization has been that, yes, you can go and search in the darkness all you want, and you can experience and ravel in it and have that experience, but ultimately we can only get to the light by becoming the light, by choosing to be it, and by realizing that we are there already, and then to simply act as if.
Yes.
Yeah.
You are so correct, because I have created now what I teach to my people is the being human dance of simplicity. The left
Mm.
is where I come from,
Mm-hmm.
this is where I am, and this is where I'm going to.
Mm.
I'm
Beautiful.
interested only in where I'm going to, because you
Yeah.
don't drive on the freeway looking in your rear view mirror. You
Yes.
acknowledge this is where I come from, and
Yes.
this is where I'm going to. So this is where my entire life's focus is on. And
Mm-hmm.
people say, oh yeah, but it's very confusing there. There's so many problems. Where do I go to? So I asked the question, so how many problems are there? And people say, there's countless numbers of problems. And I thought too that there were countless numbers of problems. And my entire life until recently, when I realized, as I've been refining information, that there can only be a maximum of 3 problems. That's all. You can have 2 or 1, none, or maybe mostly 3. No matter where you come from, the north, south, east, west, whether we're black, white, blue, or come from Timbuktu, you just got 3 problems: health, relationships, and your career or your money.
Yes.
Everybody wants to look good and feel good, have
Yeah.
loving relationships, and loads of cash to enjoy it all.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all we're trying to do. But most
Absolutely.
people's life spent here 98% on their jobs, because that's where they have to be at, and I understand. And not many people know how to solve the problem of relationships and health. Hence, we have 95% of the world's population lives in disease, misery, and medication dependency.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first time in human history, medical science is saying that the young of our species may not outlive their parents.
Yes.
We see of the cancers amongst these children. Divorce rates. I mean, I've been around the block a few times myself, and I know. How do I manage relationships? I didn't know, you see. And now I know that the only first relationship that I should manage is the one that I have with myself. And that is the first principle. Because if I don't do that, how can I manage a relationship with somebody else? So
Absolutely.
these are the three problems. Where am I going to? I mean, here's a Steve Jobs. He was an expert at his job. Oh, sorry, excuse this. I realize I said job twice. But yes, he was an expert at what he did. But he didn't have much of an idea of how to take care of his health and his relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Be an expert at what we do in our career, but we may not know the other two. So we're not expert at being human.
Absolutely. Oh, that's just beautiful. Yes. Beautiful. It is. It's this integration, which I feel is where we are. We are all moving towards, or certainly consciousness is forcing us to move towards this integration of becoming the holy. For me, it's the holy human. It's the new luminous being, the Homo Sanctus, that it's not good enough to be a Homo sapiens and to know, but to know from mind. But when we become the light, when we become this integrated holistic being, and therefore we know life truly, and we know that all aspects need to be respected. You know, so many people will say, oh, but I only care about my career, I don't care about my relationship. It's like, well, you don't get to choose, actually.
Yes. Yes.
It's, we need all, and we don't get to choose. We don't get to egoically decide, I don't care about my closed heart. Sorry, it doesn't work that way.
Yes. Yes. You know, I found throughout my life and in my own life as well, and then working with other people, that there are people in different phases of their lives. And the first created 4 different phases and some sub phases as well. And the first one is, there are people who don't know that they don't know,
Mm-hmm.
and don't want to know. And that's a regret. And when we regret, we say, I wish that was different. And so these are souls too. And because they're at that phase in their lives, and it's a regret, I say that they are souls. So what do we do with the souls of the planet? We just leave them as they are,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, someday their life will bring them to a place where they would need to change. And then the second group of people are those who know that they don't know, and they want to know.
Right.
And then who are they? They are the seekers. And what
Mm-hmm.
do they seek? They seek the truth, you know. And I found out, as in my second principle, that the truth is in my blood, because the blood never lies. And that I am producing my blood on a daily basis by the 4 things that I do, which is the second principle. 1, 2, 3, 4. I eat, drink, breathe, and I think.
Mm-hmm.
And these 4 things are the only 4 things I do to take care of me. I eat, drink, breathe, and I think. And these 4 things produces my blood. And the truth is, I made my blood, you made your blood, and whoever it is made their blood. And it has a specific balance of pH 7.4. And so the seeker is seeking the truth. And I say this truth is that which flows in the blood in your veins. And you are responsible for that truth. And you're the custodian of that truth. And how to do these 4 things in accordance to how Mother Nature wants us to do it. And for your body's sake.
Mm-hmm.
Junk is produced in the factories and food is produced in the natural world. So we cannot say junk food. It's either junk or it's either food. If it's 50% junk you consume and 50% food, which means that which does not harm you when you eat it, that's what the definition of food is. Then if you eat 50% and 50%, it should stand to reason you should be half dead. So those are the seekers. But then there are complacent seekers who know
Yeah.
all the right words, read all the right books, and have great conversations. But when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to taking responsibility for how to eat, drink, breathe, and think according to cellular requirements, they can't do this.
Yes.
So they run and hide in their words. They are the complacent seekers. Then you get the seekers of the truth. When they hear this, they say, oh, wow, I've been waiting to hear this, and I want to take responsibility. I will change how I eat, drink, breathe, and think, and so that I will change and alter the biochemical in my body and create internal hygiene, light the light inside myself. And that is the other group of people who know that they know. They have take the information about how to be internally clean, light the light inside themselves, and they share it with others. They are the torchbearers of the planet. And they are on their own journey of realizing how to be nothing or no thing eventually. And but they have learned how to live according to the truth of that which flows in the blood in their veins, and they share it with others. So what do? We see the first group, they are the souls of the planet. We share information, we plant seeds in their consciousness. Perhaps someday, once again, when the season is right, it will germinate. Then there are complacent seekers, then there are seekers of the truth, and then there are torchbearers of the planet. So we're all aspiring to become torchbearers. But
Absolutely.
there are phases in our lives, and we have to go through those phases.
Yeah.
There's not a single champion that was carried to the top.
Yes. That's where, once again, I go back to the suffering story. When people are not sure and they can't commit, and often it's hard to hear this, but I say in all honesty, go suffer some more. Because it's only when we have suffered enough, and that there also is nothing wrong with suffering, because I feel, we've made suffering into this big wrong thing. It's shameful, it's wrong. Suffering is beautiful. Suffering is where we find grace when we use it. So it's, one of my things that I always tell my people is milk your suffering. Get as much out of it as you can. Get in there. Don't try to extrapolate yourself from it, but go deeper into it until you find, okay, boom, now I'm ready to emerge into the light because I've gotten everything that I needed out of the suffering.
Yes, of course. I appreciate that so many people want a great life. And once again, it's a game, and you have to have some rules to play the game. You can't expect to make toxic blood, because it's the same blood if the pH is on an acidic level and it's feeding the toe with gout, and the same blood is feeding the brain 700 milliliters per minute. What kind of thoughts are you going to create?
Oh, yes, absolutely. That is such an important point.
Yes, it's why I go to the second principle. You must eat, drink, breathe, and think according to cellular requirements. That is, bring in the good. The third principle is throw out the bad. And there's once again 4 ways in which we do that: the rectum, kidneys, lungs, and through the skin. If we do not bring in the good, and we do not throw out all the bad on time, it stays in the gut, it ferments, putrefies, and goes by osmosis into the bloodstream and gets carried throughout the body. If the toe aches, we don't call it headache in the toe. That's so ridiculous. Let's call it gout. In the knee, okay, we'll call it arthritis. Oh, your hips ache. Okay, there you can have hip replacement. Your soft cancer, cervical spondylosis, frozen shoulder, tennis elbow, arthritis in the finger, can't see, can't smell, can't taste, can't hear, can't think clearly. The entire organism is shutting down because the biochemical is now toxic and it's feeding every part of the body. And so what shall we do? We'll go to the healthcare system. Oh yes, listen to a lie long enough and you think it is the truth. It is not a healthcare system. It's a disease care system. Take your disease to them. And of course, they have the most beautiful and sophisticated ways in which to deal with diseases. But did anybody get healthy from there? No, because after one surgical procedure is another. The only healthcare system is to follow the principles of how to be human fully and to create it for yourself, which means self-responsibility. Being human is self-responsibility.
Yes.
So healthcare system is bring in the good, 1, 2, 3, 4, throw out the bad on time, because we're the only species when nature calls, we're too busy to answer. And the entire system works by peristaltic movement, contract, relax. And every time people are too busy. They just stop it, contract, relax, no stop, no stop. Now we're talking about a substance that can stick on the porcelain of a toilet pan. So what's happening on the inside walls of this organ, the colon? It
Yeah.
starts to become like a cesspool instead of a smoothly flowing sewer system.
Mm-hmm.
And my blood then starts to become more and more toxic. It's like a motor car now that has diesel instead of petrol and a blocked exhaust. How far does it go on the freeway? And here's the vehicle of my soul. And every other machine is a copy of this design. And I have to bring in the raw material to produce the petrol that drives the vehicle of the soul on the freeway of my life. And I have to take responsibility for throwing away the dirt on time. And I mess up on both sides, on both ends.
Yeah.
And it just sits in here, ferments and putrefies, spills into the bloodstream, gets into my brain, and schizophrenic behavior is so common now. Brain tumors are so common. And yet, this is what just makes me feel how magnificent the Creator is. Because when you look at the capillaries in the body, they are just capillaries, a network of them, of course. And in the brain, yes, a rich network of capillaries. But on the inside of the capillaries in the brain, they are different from the capillaries in the rest of the body. There's special endothelial cells lining the walls, inside walls of the capillaries to form what is called a BBB, the blood-brain barrier,
Mm-hmm.
meaning that whatever toxic waste comes into the brain in that via the blood shouldn't go through the capillary walls into the brain, because this is your central processing unit. You can't mess this up. It runs everything else. So, but this was produced by a creator for an organism in an environment where there wasn't a single can of Coke or a motor car to spew toxic fumes into the air. And now
Absolutely.
what's going on?
Mm.
53,000 deaths in South Africa alone from air pollution related diseases.
Mm.
China has smog days, Europe snow days. And so we're consuming so many other forms of junk, and it's going through the walls of the BBB, and it's going into the brain, giving us tumors and schizophrenic behavior, irrational. People would rather fight than hug one another. They can't help themselves.
Yeah.
There's a law, there's a law in the East that I learned about. As above, so below, as within, so without.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, as below, so above is also true. Whatever is here, fermenting and putrefying, will get into my bloodstream and go into my brain and make me schizophrenic. So where does one start with all of this, to put it right? Because the other two principles, the one, first, second, third, fourth principle is the beginning of the end. If I didn't bring in the right things, I did throw out the bad things on time, then there'll be 4 stages of disease: acute, subacute, chronic, and degenerate.
Mm-hmm.
So my body is now sitting with all this toxic waste inside itself, somewhere where there's an inherent weakness. It's collecting and it's going through the phases of disease. And eventually, when it breaks down in degenerate condition, they cut, chop, change, and throw people out into the street, none the wiser. And the last 4 items on my principle, the last principle is, first one is education. Nothing will change without us willing to learn something new. Einstein said the same level of consciousness that creates a problem is not the same level of consciousness that will resolve it. So we have to be willing to accept new information, recreate neural pathways, and change, go to the right-hand side. The second thing I do here is colon therapy, without which I don't like working with people on the subtler levels.
Absolutely, yes.
The soul. If the blood that feeds your toad gout is feeding your brain, then why should I talk about scraping, painting, and polishing the top floor, the penthouse of a tall high-rise building, which is your life? I'm not going to do that. It's a waste. Let's go into the foundation.
Yeah.
Clean out with colonics and enemas and wash out the digestive system of all its impurities. Flush out the liver, the gallbladder, pancreas. Cleanse, purify thyself, said the good book, and I shall exalt thee to the throne of power. So it's about internal hygiene, and that's colon therapy. The third thing is that I use some products here, bentonite clay and psyllium husk, to cleanse the biochemical. And the last thing is lymph drainage massage that we do, where we go into those areas where we know there's stagnation and mobilize. So we push with the toxic fluid with massage. We absorb it with bentonite clay, and we extract it with colon therapy. Push, absorb, extract. And if you're not putting it in for the 7 days that people stay here, or they come and go for 7 days, they're fasting on fruit juices and vegetable juices, we extract, and what comes out is horrific. I mean, it's just vile stuff. And that 7 days is a very short pit stop on the racetrack of their lives. And it's just a foundation that we set and show them how to go off and live their lives so that they continue the good work we have started here. We cannot fail them. They can fail themselves. So we try to help them not fail themselves.
Right. And so what do you say to people? Because I often get that, people will say, oh, but hydrocolonic therapy and enemas, that's not natural. That goes against nature.
Yes, of course. If we lived in nature, we wouldn't have to do that, because we'd forage for our food, which was plant-based generally, until we learned to master fire, and then we hunted some animals and so on. But if we lived naturally, and then we were creatures of mobility, because when the lion came about, we couldn't be caught sitting with a big buffet meal, digesting it without much energy left for anything else. We would have to run as soon as we heard the roar of a lion. So we're creatures of mobility. And if you look at the muscle structure themselves, they're like spindles, and the lymph glands are there. So when we move the body, they cleanse themselves. So the body was designed by nature to be self-healing, self-cleaning, and rejuvenating as well. So in the natural state, yes, we would forage for our food. Plumpest, juiciest fruit was always out of reach. Water was way down there in its natural source, and we were vigilant all the time, weary in the moment, not thinking about what happened 10 years ago or what might happen 2 years from now. We were always there. That was natural. But we migrated from the jungles to the concrete jungles, where we are eating rubbish produced in factories by those who own the system. And they have 3 criteria for what they call food there. It must taste nice, it must feel good in the mouth, must be quick to prepare. And if they put that 3 criteria, they got people. I mean, someone somewhere in a laboratory is sitting right now trying to make a 2-minute noodle into a 1-minute noodle. And when they do, the world is going to go, oh, thank you. You love us so much, saving us more time and more vitamin enriched. But that's just pure sludge. It's no fiber in the body. So yes, enemas and colonics may seem unnatural right now, but it is necessary because we live in an unnatural environment, and disease is just the body's way of trying to cope of being in an unnatural environment.
Absolutely, yes. So it's nice to hear you say, really the same thing, is that on one hand, it's so simple, and on the other hand, to really use disease as what it is. It's an alarm bell. It's not a death sentence, because that's when then a lot of people go like, oh, well, it's kind of over now anyway. And they hand themselves over to the medical system because that's the easiest thing to do, instead of taking full responsibility and realizing, well, this now is my time to radically change my lifestyle, change my thinking, change my emotions, which obviously come from the way that we think, and to realize just how deeply denatured and degenerate we have become. And I feel that is the healthcare revolution that the world needs.
Yes, if I was involved in an accident or fell and broke my leg right now, I want nobody but a doctor to work on me. I mean, he's studied for 7 years, never mind he's ended up with bad handwriting after all of that time. To be able to set my bones and repair my body. But
Mm-hmm.
disease is a result of a mismanaged life.
Yes.
And
Yes.
there's no medicine in a bottle or an injection or a surgical procedure that will repair a mismanaged life. The only
Absolutely.
solution, the only way to heal is to take responsibility to manage one's life. And the formula is eat, drink, breathe, and think according to cellular requirements. Are you doing that? Are you throwing out the dirt on time, or are you holding back? And no matter what we do, even though we may eat, drink, breathe, and think well enough, we live in a toxic environment. And every 6 months, I still fast for 7 days.
Mm-hmm.
My colonics every day, my liver flush, and so on, because I'm breathing the same chemical soup everybody else is breathing here.
Of
I
course.
often go, and if I came for your birthday and there was this beautiful cake that may have been produced in the factory, I may choose to eat it. I will take the devil and put it in my blood, but the next day I will fast, I will detox myself, and I am in control. But we have to understand that we are in charge of our health. And if we don't take responsibility, then we're never going to become healthy. And if you say, it's so difficult, I don't know where to start with how you eat and drink today.
Mm-hmm.
9,000 liters of oxygen per day, whether you're thinking on the right-hand side or the left-hand side. How are you producing your biochemical? Is it acid or is it alkaline? Is it going to enhance your cellular well-being, or is it going to supply it with that which in 2 minutes can make cancer for you?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it break down your nervous system and make you so schizophrenic? See? So
Right.
those are the places to start examining oneself.
And what do you say, because obviously there's a lot of people out there that, and I know it's just often a matter of time, but that look like they can drink alcohol, eat the junk, and, still look good and be fairly healthy. And how do you reckon that is possible?
Here, you can't violate the laws of nature forever. The same people that look in this snapshot of life right now, so slim, so healthy, so vibrant, and drinking their alcohol and smoking and so forth, we don't see them when they're in their wheelchair and they're bleeding, oozing, and passing all over the place. They may look thin on the outside now, but they're fat on the inside. They're
Mm-hmm.
clogging up with toxic waste and poison, and eventually an artery bursts, or they get diagnosed with a tumor or a cancer here or there. And you know what? The bottom line is you cannot violate the laws of nature forever.
Yeah.
We have to come to a place where we're brought down to our knees and we have to examine what we're doing. How do we eat, drink, breathe, and think?
Right. And on the other hand, what I'm seeing also a lot in the world of detoxification is that, there's a lot of people that are maybe even detoxing for, 7, 8 years in a row, and they're juice fasting and they're fasting and they're giving it stick, but they are not regenerating. They are starting to deplete. And so, where is the fine line? And do you recognize, would you say that that's more an emotional issue rather than a physical, which then obviously goes into the physical?
Of course, I always tell people who come here that when you here for the 7 days, you're here to basically clean the three instruments that soul has to experience its visitation to the planet, which is its mental, emotional, and physical being, the brain, the heart, and the physical body. I will help you with the colonics and there's other treatments that I have here to wash away the past from your physical body. And
Mm-hmm.
we see the evidence of that in the colonics. This is the past. All life begins here in the abdomen, and all death begins here too. It's the
Mm-hmm.
center of the wheel, and the spokes go from here. If this ain't good, don't expect the rest of the wheel to turn okay.
Right.
So this is easy. To clean the physical body is easy,
Mm-hmm.
but to clean the emotional and the mental self is not easy.
Yeah.
We don't have the magic swab to just wipe that away, I tell them.
Yes.
So that is now self-responsibility. But there's a biology behind that too, which we can discuss perhaps at some time, of how the brain works to produce thoughts, how neural pathways are created, and how there's a chemical loop from each thought that
Mm-hmm.
is generated when we produce these thoughts, and how the cells of the body now are dependent on that particular way of thinking.
Yes.
So that is what is called habit, where the cells now have become the mind. The body has become the mind. You may decide, okay, I want to change my life today. I'll start juice fasting. I will I will change my diet. I will give up this ice cream and this coffee and donut. And yes, you have a strong resolve to do that. And you go through the whole day, on fruit and vegetables, and you feel good. But by the evening, the cells themselves are, craving their normal biochemical that is produced as a result of us having a certain kind of habit,
Mm-hmm.
start to tell the brain, fast track up the spinal cord, where's my stuff that I'm dependent on? And the body now supersedes this subconscious mind, and it starts to generate an action that is happening here on the physical level that the person sometimes doesn't even know how that happened, because they find themselves sitting on the couch with that cake in their hand and the coffee there and think, how did this happen? I didn't
Yeah.
want this to happen. So there is a powerful, powerful habit that has formed between the cells and the neuron cells of the brain, which have to be broken. And that can only happen through persistence. And
Mm-hmm.
people who are fasting, juice fasting, and saying, okay, but why am I not getting better? This is a lifestyle. This is not about just taking a snapshot of doing this for a couple of years and expecting to be okay. It's taken 10, 20, 30. In my life, it was about 40 or 50 years of abuse, and that can't be changed with a wave of a wand over 4 years.
Absolutely, yes. And that is really so important to understand that this is rectifying. I love how you say, disease is the result of really wrongful living. It's not just wrongful eating, it is all these aspects. So I think, let's leave it here so that also people can listen to this and enjoy. It was such a beautiful conversation. It was absolutely delightful to listen to you and your wisdom. And I love the simplicity, and I really feel that the key is to make this as simple as it is and to portray the simplicity. And I think, as we were discussing before I started hitting record, that there is so much bliss that is awaiting on the other side when we do the right things, when we live life according to nature. Most people will not be able to withstand the bliss, and that also takes training to, can you actually live in the bliss on a day-to-day basis. So I thank you so much for your time, Ramesh, and I know that we're gonna meet at some point. I want to come to Durban and visit you and have further discussions. Yeah, I really appreciate your wisdom.
That would be nice to see you. We have built a little place here where we're trying to be self-sufficient. We make electricity from the sun, water from the borehole.
Beautiful.
Little stuff around me to live off our little garden, which is we call a farm.
Yeah.
And so, yes, it would be great to see you, and thank you for this opportunity to share the wisdom of being human.
Yes.
With we're on a journey, all of us sitting again on this spaceship and trying to make it back home, but in our visitation to enjoy this visit, not to battle and to suffer.
Absolutely, absolutely. I will put the details to your clinic and your details. I will put them under this video for people to see, and so that if they want to find you, they know where to find you. And
Thank
your
you
book,
so much.
which I definitely highly recommend getting your books.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ramesh.
Namaste.
Namaste.